It is the 6th week in Ordinary Time, and this is Extraordinary. So this week's word of the week is happy. What an awesome word to have. Happy, joy, and to think about the amazing things that God gives us in our life that make things cool. Now Pope Francis, very awesome dude, he said that he can't imagine someone who's properly a Christian who isn't walking around with a smile on their face. Because if we realise God loves us, what's there to be sad about? I mean, that's pretty cool. And to be fair, we walk around and probably see lots of people who are looking a bit miserable. Pope Francis calls them sourpusses, says they walk around with faces like this. It says, that's not being a Christian. Being a Christian is about being happy. So maybe this week you need to think about the things and the people that make you happy and the things and the people that you can make happy by being an awesome person, by living your faith and sharing that with the world. Let's have a look at our week ahead because there is some awesome stuff happening this week and some really cool saints and feasts which we're going to learn about this week. First of all, make sure you've got your Extraordinary sheet. If you haven't, download it from our website to make sure you've got that in your classroom, form room or bedroom to make sure you know exactly what's happening in the church this week. Thursday is when we hit our first feast, and we've got a guy called Saint Peter Damian. Now this guy was really interesting. He kind of looked at how we live our life. He looked at what it meant to have discipline. Of course, discipline is where we get the word disciple. And discipline means to go through a series of actions or processes to show that we follow, kind of keeping ourselves on the right path. We all know we have to be disciplined in terms of achieving anything. He was all about doing things right. So much so that back in the day, he wrote some very, very controversial stuff about why the church wasn't doing what it should be. He was saying, listen guys, we've got to be doing things better. We can't be treating people badly. We can't be looking out for ourselves. We can't be being greedy or selfish. We've got to sort things out. And he was saying that way back then. Always, 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 we need people to keep us on the right path. And that's why he's also a doctor of the church. Again, remember that phrase? That means that his teachings are one of the core principles that we held to as a church, and a really cool guy to celebrate this week. Now, Friday. This is a bit of an odd one, because it's not a person that we're celebrating, it's a chair. Yeah, a chair. But not just any chair, St. Peter's chair. And apparently, this is the chair that sits in the back of the St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. So if you go around, there's this big, huge, massive altar in the middle if you've ever been there, and you go round the back, there's this chair. Now this chair is attributed traditionally to St. Peter. Now, archaeologically speaking, there is still debate about whether this was his chair or not, okay, but the tradition is, and the understanding is that yes it was. And actually, although it doesn't look particularly like it would have been St. Peter's chair, now that's because on top of the chair, lots of artwork and ornamentation and decoration's been put, so it doesn't look exactly as it would do originally. Right down at the bottom is the original chair, a lot more simple. Reason all this is really important is not because St. Peter sat in it, but because of what it means and what it represents. And this is what Pope John Paul II said when he was asked about it. He said, look, it's really important in our tradition. It's a really important relic in the Catholic Church. That's not a doubt. But what is more important is what it represents. It represents authority. Now, when you sit in a throne or a chair, it says, you're the man, you're the boss. Of course, and St. Peter was the first pope. And the idea is that actually we can trace all of the popes back to St. Peter, showing that the same authority St. Peter had, and he was given it by Jesus, pretty cool, is all the way down to Pope Francis, who now sits in that same seat. Although he doesn't actually sit on the seat of St. Peter, because it's really high up and probably quite uncomfortable. But what we need to remember is that that chair represents authority. And true fact for you, the word from Latin that comes from chair, okay, or cathedra, is where we get the word cathedral. Cathedral is where the chair of the bishop is in a diocese. So in our diocese, in our cathedral, we've got a special cathedra, which is in fact the special chair which the bishop uses to use and show his authority from. Now, every time you see a cathedral, there will be a big chair in it called a cathedra, which is why it's called a cathedral. And that's something that shows the sign of authority. On Saturday, we've got the feast of St. Polycarp. Now, St. Polycarp was one of the early founding fathers of the church. Really important dude in terms of getting the church going back in its earliest days. He was a martyr, and like all the martyrs, they gave their life for their faith. Often, even though they were being tortured or hurt, not denying their faith, in fact, being even stronger in their faith. One thing that's really cool about St. Polycarp is they tried to burn him, but flames couldn't touch him. He was like, please, okay? He was really, really strong. Whilst he was there, he was professing his faith for Christ, and eventually he was killed, but he never once doubted in his faith. What an amazing example. And actually what he was kind of saying, and I think what all of the saints that we focus on all the time say, is that actually real happiness doesn't come from being physically well or happy or safe or rich or anything. It comes from God. So this week, I want you to think about how and where you find your happiness. Is it stuff that passes, like sweets or food or chocolate, although they're cool, or is it in stuff that's real, like family and friendships and relationships? Because when we're experiencing that love, we're experiencing that God. When we experience that God, we experience real happiness. So this week, go out and be happy and have a great week. We'll see you next time.